Yeah. Oh man. Hey guys, what's going on? I got Kyra here. We're gonna talk a little bit. Well, I don't know if it's different, but you wouldn't expect to have this type of discussion talking about doulas in a personal finance community. But like I was telling Kyra back, and you know how I get, guys. I've always my excuse ain't changed. I get carried away with the pre-discussion, get excited, and before I long, I'll be like, oh, let's go talk to the group. So, but I really want to talk about this idea of the doula and how it relates to the childbirth experience, and it's really something that had kind of been on my mind, on my heart, to really dig in and learn more about it. Now, I didn't use me and my wife didn't use a doula, but we did have a birth plan. I do suggest people have a birth plan. My colleagues, if you know my line brother, is Chief, or Rachel. It works global, but she does hypno babies, and those that was something we had learned about the process that we didn't pursue, but I do think it's helpful. But having that doula really takes us down the path of really being educated for this birthing experience. And I can go grab a whole bunch of gory stats about how we might be mistreated in the birthing experience, how African Americans aren't necessarily treated equally. And to be honest, a lot of things with most issues that we have comes from not just a lack of education, but a lack of the resources. Who can you trust to give you, Kyra, like the borrowed a word from you, objective
Mm-hmm.
advice that doesn't have any type of motive in it, but just, hey, um, this is how it goes. These are your true options. If the doctor told you this is all the options. I don't have a whichever way you go, I don't have any type of um foot or hand in the situation. It's all for you. But if you said this was your goal for your birth, these are your true options. So Kyra, I definitely appreciate you lending yourself as a voice to have this discussion this evening. But before we jump in, can you please tell a little bit about yourself, how did you transition into this space, and kind of start us off there.
Okay. So, like you said, my name is Kyra. I am the owner and operator of the Divine Flower Child Doula and Birth Services. I'm a doula, childbirth educator, lactation specialist, infant care specialist. And I got into this space from corporate training. And so when I was doing corporate training, I was doing EMR systems, which is the system that they actually use in hospitals. And the particular module that I had is called Stork, which is all labor and delivery.
Okay.
And to put it lightly, I hated everything I saw. Everything I saw or heard in the way that doctors and nurses treated people, talked to people, talked about people. I hated it. And I remember the very first thing that I went home and Googled to even learn, because I had no idea what a doula was, right? My whole education is in education and training, right?
Okay.
Development, all of that, like everything. That's what I did before. And so the first thing I Googled was bad labor and delivery nurses.
Ooh.
Because I didn't know what I was looking for. But the way my brain works for anything is every single thing that we do has some real world consequence,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there was no way that they were treating and talking to and about people this way and nothing was happening.
Right.
And then that's when I learned about the maternal mortality rate in this country, the Black maternal mortality rate
Mm.
specifically, and that women are up to Black women are up to 4 times more likely to pass from a childbirth related
Exactly.
complication than white women. And I was like, oh, y'all killing people.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Got it. Because that was my real world consequence. And so I learned about a doula. And once I was finished with that particular contract, I started another job and I was like, no, it's no, I'm not waiting anymore. So I quit my job and started training. And here I am 3 years later.
And I'm always just fascinated with the idea that you were a corporate trainer.
Mhm.
So when you talk about, and I know I speak about it, especially this is one of the reasons why I'm so motivated by money. If I ran the rat race, if I did things normal, you know what I mean, and I didn't do right by my money, how would we be having a conversation like this today? We probably would, but just in fact, not really if I'm sitting at a desk trying to open up a checking account for somebody.
Right.
So the same thing in your fact. Like you're literally like I figuratively say, hey, you're changing somebody's life. You're saving or helping save someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so like I said, it's still a little bit sensitive topic, so I'll try to get through this without um talking or thinking too much about how much this could impact our particular situation. Obviously, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
father now, and it's a blessing being with the baby every day. Obviously, you have a son now, that whole scenario, but it's so many things, so many moving parts to that scenario that the slightest misstep, somebody could lose a
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is at the beginning? So you got into being a doula. So what really attracted you to the doula specifically? Because there are a lot of different ways you
Um,
could help throughout
so
that
there's a lot of
process.
different ways,
Right.
right? And ultimately, on the path that I'm on, I want to go into legislation
Okay.
because we can't doula our way out of the crisis that
Hmm.
is happening, right? It needs to be some changes on like a legislative
Law, legal.
and foundational level, right? But as I was looking through everything I could do, I wanted to be in the room, right? And the very first thing that I looked into was to become a midwife. And so what a lot
Oh,
of people
okay.
don't realize is midwives are medical professionals. They have as much education and training as like a nurse practitioner, right? So they're just
Really?
like an OB, except they just don't do surgery. And then
Okay.
there are midwives who do C-sections, right? But people don't realize they think it's like some backwoods thing.
Yeah.
It's like a real,
Janky. Somebody who couldn't hack it.
like the actual certification is a certified nurse midwife. So there,
Okay.
it's just like a nurse practitioner. So, um, but as I was continuing my research, I realized 95% of all births in this country happen in a hospital setting. So
Mm.
yes, I could be a midwife and I could work in a birth center and home births. But most of the lives that we are losing are results of inadequate care in the hospital and with their doctors. And so I wanted something that I could help more people. And I got to meet people where they at, which is in a hospital. That's where a lot of people feel comfortable having babies, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just knowing how to advocate and have the desired birth you want in that space. And so I went that way.
So a couple of things before I want you to kind of explain the difference between everything a doula may do to a midwife to all the different other resources we have. But you'll mention this probably several times, but it's what you desire the situation to be.
Hmm.
So, like I said, me and my wife, we had a birth plan. I didn't even know you were supposed to have a birth plan, and when
Hmm.
somebody mentioned that, I was like, a birth plan, like what? What am I have a birth plan? My plan was to take the baby to the hospital and come, or take my wife to the hospital and come back with 3 people versus 2. That was
Right.
my plan. You know what I mean? Have insurance. That was part of my plan too. You know what I mean? Even after, get a will, get
Hmm.
in state, you know what I'm saying? Make sure people can eat, you know what I mean? All that type of stuff. That was my plan. So the whole idea that, hey, you got to have a plan for this one event. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It could take 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever. And there are decisions and who's going to make the decision and what if this happens, which way you want to go. And it can get down to it. But then I also like the fact of what you said, your desire. How do you desire the experience to be? And I don't
Hmm.
think in life, you know what I'm saying, in general, do we look at how do we desire our outcome just in life career, but especially, hey, I can pick how I want to do this birth thing and not
Hmm.
go in there and just basically be service and be like, well, this isn't really comfortable for me. You know what I
Right.
mean? It can be a positive experience. And I
Yeah.
think that's where I like kind of your message and what you've been kind of teaching through your post and following that. Hey, you can decide for it because to be truthful, again, my limited person experience up until I saw you, only other person I heard that really spoke about, hey, this is what I want from my birth was my line brother's wife. She
Mhm.
dictated like, this is how I want this to go down, and each time. So I really respected that to the point that I'm like, dang, you can actually pick
You
how
can.
this goes down, and you don't just go in there and just, hey, go to room B. Well, I might not want to be there. This is how the bed works. These are decisions I want to work. I'm trying. I don't want to see sex. You know what I mean? These are, all these different things that get forced upon you because, especially that C-section thing. That thing
Mhm.
really starts to irritate me because you
Yeah.
so much a sneeze. You know what I'm saying, in the delivery room. Oh, gotta go to see. Gotta go see. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
God, she fine. You know what I mean? So, and again, husbands be so like kind of just sitting there, hey, I'm trying to hold my wife. We have to educate ourselves because next to our wife, as far as the two, we're probably a little bit more of sound mind and judgment in that if we're participate.
Mhm.
So, how can a doula kind of help formulate and make this desired outcome happen? That was a long way to say that.
So the first place that I start with anybody is childbirth education. Now, not all doulas do childbirth education. That's a whole separate certification that I did. But the first place that I start, even before that, I tell people you have to go to childbirth education. My recommendation is to not take childbirth educations that are a part of hospital systems because they're teaching you how to be a good patient. You want somebody to help you have the kind of birth or introduce you to the concepts of the kind of birth that you may want, right?
Mhm.
So I always start there. And then once I'm done with childbirth education and we're working on a birth plan, the first thing I ask people is like, if you had the perfect birth, what does it look like? Right? Birth is unpredictable. But if you have an outline for the things that you really want, you pick out those things that are super important to you, you're more likely to be satisfied with your birthing experience because you were in control.
Mhm.
I also have like those really difficult conversations. So, if something is going on with the baby, number one, how do you know there's something genuinely going on with the baby? And then number two, if you have to move forward with a C-section, what's really important to you? And I'll give you an example. For me, no matter what, I wanted a photo the minute I got to meet my baby. I could have had my baby in a car and
Mhm.
I still could have gotten that. I could have had to have an emergency C-section and I still could have gotten that. But it gets you to a place where you're thinking about those maybe negative or unwanted things in a positive way. So
Mhm.
that's like my foundation for it. And then I just build birth plans based on what the person has told me that they want. So, like you mentioned, like I have no vested interest in what people choose, right?
Mhm.
I just want them to know what all of their choices are, what the evidence is, what the research is, what is the evidence-based best practice. And then whatever they choose is what they choose. But I like to let people know they have options that they didn't even know that they had. Because
Exactly.
we do have options. Even when you're thinking about something as simple as like pain management for labor, everybody knows an epidural, but most people don't know about IV medication, NSAIDs, laughing gas, acupressure. No, they don't know all of these things. And so they think, well, I don't want to be in pain. My only option is this. And you have a lot of other options. And so that is how I work through the process to build birth plans with people. I tell anybody, no matter if you're hiring a doula or not, get a birth plan together because the nurse that you're going to see when you get in there is somebody you've never met before.
Exactly.
It's not the doctor because your
Mhm.
doctor usually doesn't come until it's time to push,
Mhm.
unless they happen to be making rounds. Um, but you have this person that does not know you, you don't have a rapport with, they don't know what kind of birth you desire. But there are some nurses who genuinely care and genuinely want to help you have a good birthing experience. And so a birth plan is like a foundation. You not sure exactly how everything else is gonna go, but it gives y'all like common ground, like this is what I want. And then your nurse can then use their expertise and their experience to help you reach that. That's with or without a doula. I like to say a doula is an additional great piece to that because we are, first of all, objective. Second of all, we don't work for this hospital that you're in.
Mhm.
So we are not bound to or limited by um, what the hospital's policies and traditions are. Because a lot of stuff that they do in the hospital is not necessarily policy, it's tradition. They
Mhm.
could never give you like a written policy like this is hardly ever is there actually a written policy. It's just a tradition of the way that they function within that hospital. And so doulas are able to really stand in that space. And we're also able to like advocate for our clients. I definitely have had clients where the doctor was like, well, you haven't progressed in 4 hours. We need to head back for a C-section. I was like, give us a minute, because my client had had an epidural. She had been asleep, like, of course. But doulas know, and a midwife will tell you, okay, failure to progress, like, let's change positions. The doctor was willing to go and cut this woman open again, because this would have been her
quickly,
quick. And for something that literally took me 30 minutes to get her completely dilated. And had she not had a doula there, people don't know that. They don't know that a failure to progress or an arrest of labor is grossly overused, and they don't know that, right? People don't know that.
I know that C-section is grossly overused. They throw that down like a spade hand, like, you know, as soon as they can get it, let me get this joker out of my hand, you know what I mean? So
right,
but
and that's how they manage their time, right?
Yeah.
The doctors are able to manage their time and schedules through inductions of labor and C-sections, right? So if I can predict even just 50% of my births, then the ones that may be spontaneous, I have a little bit better control over it, because they don't want to miss your birth. They don't want to miss the money for your birth.
Exactly.
And no matter what they say, nobody became a doctor to not make money.
Exactly. And the doctor, the more babies that doctor delivers, the more revenue and more insurance that person can collect.
Right. And people have to also like think about their births from like a financial planning aspect, in that, let's just say you go in for an induction. An induction for a first-time mom traditionally can take like 3 days. That's just for labor. So that's 3 days that you are paying to be in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Some insurances are fantastic and they cover it all, but some are not. And so now that's every day that's adding another couple $1,000 to a bill in the end. To get an epidural, you have to, that's an additional expense. You have to pay for the anesthesiologist. You have to pay for all of the medication that they use. And people put a lot of financial planning into like their wedding. Like people get engaged on Monday, on Wednesday, they call them the wedding planner. On Friday, they going to see wedding venues. People decide they want to have a baby, just do nothing.
They show up.
They just show up. And so it can be a huge financial expense to have a baby. And that's one of the great things about a doula. It's like we're literally shown to reduce the cost of having a baby.
Yeah.
Like it's not my word. It is what the study showed. We can reduce the overall cost because we help to prevent some of those things that happen as far as interventions in the hospital. But people don't think about it like that, right? People just like, oh, my mama had a baby. My cousin had a baby. I'm going to have this baby. And they go in and it's like the most traumatic experience of their life.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's great that you kind of brought that up, because we definitely have to understand the tribal knowledge that we have doesn't serve us well in this life that we're living. How our parents handle money, how our parents handle relationships. And I mean, not everybody's like that, but we could all do a better job of educating ourselves around certain areas. But when it comes to the real important things, traditionally, we lack the structure and the education of that structure of how this should be going. Now, we were all wealthy and we all never had an issue with pregnancy and all this and that. My mom still talks about stuff that hurts just from pregnancy, and I'm 36, you know what I mean? So, and she blamed me, and I'm like, man, I just showed up. But
I didn't even
ask. You know what I mean? I didn't really ask for this. Y'all invited me to the party. I came to the party. So, but it's important because, again, just like if you go to a restaurant and they only have one item on the list, well, that's what you're gonna order. But if you know all your options, be like, oh, well, I like to try this, or I like to experience this. You don't know what better is until better is put in front of you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your health, the value of doing this particular thing right will help and serve you well. I'm not gonna say it's gonna fix everything from the mom guilt and the postpartum, But if you're positive about your birthing experience, that sets you on a course to be at least be able to handle those challenges a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more positively, and you might not have as much stress still emotionally built up in your body
Yeah.
from that experience. And that's the thing that even though people don't talk about it because we don't necessarily like money and like our relationships, we don't necessarily talk about our birthing experience until something happens, and then
Mm-hmm.
somebody say, "Oh, you know what? That kind of happened to me too." This
Mm-hmm.
is this. Well, why you didn't tell me before I went in there? Why didn't you say, "Hey, these are some things that we looked at. You could take the advice, but these are things that happened that we had to deal with." And I get it. Everybody has to grieve, but if the time you share is after the event happened, it's less impactful advice. But if you share before, and then we're able, my wife or whoever, saying, is able to go in and actually push back those things that are tradition or those things that they have been practicing that just ain't working. After so many people push back on something, they
Mm-hmm.
stop offering. They like,
Right.
look, we're not gonna go this route no more. This is
Right.
how we're gonna do. Because again, like you said, there's legislation that needs to be done and
Mm-hmm.
other things at a higher level. But sometimes the cause we're not going to get that overnight, and so we can stop
Not.
the
It's
stop
not
we
gonna happen overnight.
exactly. So but we can stop, be like, hey, then I won't do this, I'm only going to do this on my terms. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool, then I'll have my birth somewhere else. If everybody keeps having their birth somewhere else, the hospital gonna have some problem with all the
Right.
nurses, doctors, and all that type of thing. So it's so important. So you went down this path of being a doula. So where'd you get started? Like components wise, requirement wise, like what does it take to actually get into this role and resource?
Right. So I'll preface this by saying I think for the most part it is way too easy to become a doula.
Really?
Right. Most doula trainings are a weekend, and that
Okay.
is just to become a birth doula. That's somebody who goes in to the hospital with you, and supports you in the hospital. Um, I think it's way too easy for the job that we have to do specifically with Black mothers that we have to do. The job it takes way more than that, right? The original program that I went through, I never like to tell people who I went through, but I just say that it's very white and very whitewashed. And it did not. My first birth, I was like
Lost.
I was good at the
Mechanics.
doula piece of it.
Okay.
I didn't understand the complexities and the advocacy of it.
Okay.
Right? I had witnessed things, but like to actually be I learned that even though I thought the nurses were awful when I was training, they still had on somewhat of a mask compared to what I learned in my very first birth. Um, and so from there, I was like, I'm ill prepared for this. So I just continued to study. In order to be a doula, you don't have, there's no like certifying body. There's no unified certifying body. So every organization has different things that you have to do to get certified, which generally consists of attending some births, attending your actual training, and then getting some evaluations completed by like doctors or midwives and then clients. So that's just like the birth piece of it. But I was like, there's so much more that needs to be done. And every time I refer a client out to somebody else, so like if I have somebody who's having an issue getting pregnant, and I refer them out to a fertility doula, or I refer them out to a postpartum doula, or I refer them out to a lactation counselor. Number one, I was missing money, but number two, I felt like it was a weaker continuity of care because that is an area where a ball can get dropped. Like, especially if you have a mama that's like in the thick of postpartum depression and you're telling her like reach out to these resources, she's probably not gonna do it. Right. But if I was her birth doula, if I've been with her through all her pregnancy and now I'm with her in her postpartum, I'm a better person for her to like advocate for her.
Yeah, you understand her a little bit
Out
more.
to somebody else.
Yeah.
So
So how many different doulas? I mean, you kind of mentioned a few, but how many different doulas are there? And that lactation thing, that's definitely needed. Like
Right.
that. Oh my goodness.
Man, tell me about it. Okay. So there are just in like pregnancy and birth, right? Because there's like even death doulas. There's all
Oh
types of
wow.
doulas. So there are fertility doulas, there are birth doulas, postpartum doulas. And then you have what's called like a full spectrum doula, which means I do everything under the sun, including like surrogacy, adoption, abortion, um, fetal loss, everything under it's full spectrum, anything that can happen. And then each one of those things can have like a separate certification. They're death doulas, sex doulas, menstrual doulas. They're all types of doulas because a doula really like the core word is Greek and it means women serving women, right? And so it's basically that's like a modern interpretation of it. It really means like a woman servant. But a modern interpretation is women serving women.
Yeah.
But men can be doulas, you know.
Okay.
Anybody can, you know, be a doula. It's just if you're going to get into this space, you first of all have to understand like what you're really dealing with. Because it's not sweet. It can be fun. I love my clients. I have great relationships with all of my clients. Like I don't have a single client ever that I do not have a bomb relationship with. You know, even people who I dealt with like my very first year as a doula. But I have had times within their pregnancy or their labor where I was like, this person I've built this really amazing relationship with might not be okay. Right. And so that you have to be able to deal with that. You have to be able to deal with the biases, the racism. You have to be able to deal with the lies and the misinformation. And you also have to deal with people not wanting to pay the cost to have a doula, which doulas are not super expensive at all. But because, especially in this community, women are taught to be so tough and so independent and do this. And so then they don't even make the phone calls to the doulas. To be like, hey, I'm interested in your services. Let's meet, let's talk to discuss how much it is. They don't do that. And then when people do hire doulas, like even for me as a doula, nobody could understand why I was hiring a doula. And it's like, well, I don't want to have to advocate for myself.
Yeah.
No.
How are you gonna do that? Like, it'd be like, hold on the birth right quick. Well, let me step over here. No,
Let me put this hat on. Let me listen to every little nuanced conversation.
Right.
It's like, no, I just want to have my baby. And I want somebody there to support me. And I think another thing that happens outside of women thinking that they have to be so strong to do it on their own is that a lot of men feel like doulas replace them. And I can tell you to date, I have not had, even if it was a quick moment, I've not had a single family where I did not have to doula the dad. Like whether it was looking at him and be like, you about to pass out, or getting him something to eat, or making sure that whatever it was that he wanted, like if he wanted to catch his baby, if he wanted to make sure that the role that he wanted to play was protected. I always at some point in time have to do with that. Even if it's just a quick moment, and sometimes it's more than a quick moment. But again, a doula gets to be objective, and we get to help dad find more ways to be included, because you get a lot of men who like, I'm gonna bring my Xbox. It's like, you could bring your Xbox, or you could do these hip squeezes. Or you can hold her hand or get her water, or
be present
into the labor tub with her. All types of different things. But yeah, I know you asked me what kind of doulas there are, and
that's real good. So what typically is the cause? And because the lactation, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because the lactation, I know our insurance, we had to pay for that. I think it was in the it was covered in insurance. Is doula or those services, is that not typically covered, or how does that work? Or and also, what is the charges typically on those? Right.
So the thing that I always tell people is, if you are pregnant or if you're planning to get pregnant,
You sound like that mesothelioma commercial.
Start thinking about it around enrollment for your insurance, right? Because not every insurance plan covers even just a pregnancy, right? So start thinking about it proactively and making sure that you have really good pregnancy coverage. And then if you are pregnant or planning on getting pregnant and you're not near like open enrollment, call your insurance company and say, hey, what birthing services, lactation services, all that are covered, right? I'll just give you an example of like some things people don't realize can be covered, like a breast pump, lactation classes, lactation assistance, which are two completely different things. You can get Medicaid in Missouri has a program which most pregnant women qualify for Medicaid. They have a program in Missouri where they will literally pay for you to go to your prenatal visits. So they will send a taxi for you. They will pay for an Uber if you need whatever you need to make sure that you're making it to your prenatal appointments. Insurance will cover that. They can send diapers. There's all types of benefits, right? So I always tell people to call your insurance first and find out what they cover. Specifically, when it comes to a doula, some insurance companies cover it, some don't. If you have an FSA or an HSA and your doula is registered with what's called an NPI number, then you can pay for it with your FSA or your HSA. And then some insurance companies will reimburse for the cost. So it's like, well, y'all pay for it up front and we'll reimburse you for the cost. So those are some ways that insurance does help pay for it. Typically, for a doula that works with you through pregnancy and the immediate postpartum, the national average, right, is like $3,000, and that's the whole entire pregnancy. However, local to this area, like the Midwest, you're looking at like $1,500 to $1,800, and that includes like prenatal visits with your doula. Usually, those doulas who are that cost do childbirth education. Like I can give you an example of like my highest package is $1,800. That includes monthly prenatal visits with me. So that is where like you go into your doctor for a prenatal visit, they listen to the fetal tones and they measure your belly. Okay, well, I'm talking about your stress, what you eating, what you drinking, are you exercising, starting to educate about different things for your birth plan. You know, I give all my clients homework, things to make them play an active role in their pregnancy. That also includes their childbirth education, 2 lactation visits, and then 20 hours of postpartum care. So that's a lot included for $1,800.
Exactly.
You have some doulas who just to go to the birth, you know, it's like $700. The most important thing about all of this is you don't know if you don't make the phone call.
Yeah.
Or send the email or go to the website. You don't know. And some people think that it's like that cost per month. And it's like, no, like it's your whole pregnancy. That's it. You know, to really have somebody in the room that's an advocate for you that cares about what you desire and has a good rapport with you. Because the only other person you have a tight rapport with, especially during COVID, like it's the doula, the husband, and the birthing person. And so it's like, well, if something is going wrong, your husband is 100% in his right mind to lose his mind, right? Like if something would have been going on with your wife and your baby, you'd been like,
oh yeah, I'm snapping.
Right.
I'm snapping.
But as a doula, it's like our duty and for me, it's like a pleasure to stay level-headed and to help guide my clients through those really crazy moments. Because one thing for sure, in 9 months, you could waste $1,800 quick. That's not a lot of money. You can waste that on gas, takeout.
Especially now, $5 a gallon.
At this point, gas, groceries.
But you definitely with a pregnant wife or a pregnant whoever, at some point you're gonna be eating out a lot. So you're gonna rack up that
waste that amount of money in 9 months, but trauma from birth can last forever.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, like it's a small. It really, I know. Again, 500,000. I mean, you throw stuff out, but taking myself out of the situation where I am financially, just seriously, the value you get on the end, because like I said, when my wife got pregnant, the whole thing was built around, I want this thing as long as you calm, peaceful, as easy as you can be. That's priceless. So if that took $20,000 or it took $2,000, I don't care. You know what I mean? That's why I work. You know what I mean? That's why I didn't go out for so whatever period. So that's the why you budget and all that type of stuff. So okay, about 1,800. So and then you said how long you been doing it now?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. So what would you suggest after doing this 3 years that you would say, hey, if you want, and one of the things you actually mentioned, you was like, hey, don't just do the initial training, get more education. But what else would you say? Because when it comes to these intimate services, like you said, African American businesses, doulas, all that type of stuff, oftentimes are overlooked because of how people evaluate the quality of service we can give. So, what would you say has that would be helpful to help set someone up to you got the skill, you went and got the education. Now it's time to set up your
Take a
business.
business class. Period. The end of the sentence. That's the whole advice. Like luckily for me, like at this point I have 2 masters. But at that when I first started, I had 1. And I had 2 bachelor's degrees. So I had taken plenty of business courses. But I still went through an online entrepreneurship class, right? Because forget customer service. Customer service is a whole other piece.
Right. That's the experience.
And really with customer service, you either have that personality type or you hire somebody that has that personality type. Luckily for me, I have the personality type. But that's just that. You can't teach people to be empathetic and sympathetic if they just have a naturally apathetic personality. But learning how to manage your expenses, learning how to manage time effectively, learning how to quantify your time, learning how to make sure that when January rolls around that you are adequately prepared to file your taxes. Make sure that you understand what your tax liability and responsibility is as a business owner. That is like invaluable. Knowing how to run the business. I could be a doula all day. If I didn't know how to run the business, I could not make money.
Right. And then, like you said, this is a business where the service is over a long period of time. So because the service is over a long period of time, like again, just for example, how does the structure go? Do they give you half up front and then once the birth is completed, that's the other half? Is it monthly payments? Like how does that typically?
So every doula is different. I do a 20% deposit, and then half of the remaining balance at 25 weeks, and then the other half of the remaining balance at 35.
So the semi-installment type.
Right. And most Black doulas offer some type of payment plan.
Okay.
They do. And or discounted services, sliding scales, all kinds of things. But especially because it is over a long period of time, one of the best things that I learned in my entrepreneurship class is like budgeting. Because I'm budgeting less money now than I did when I was a trainer. I made really, really good money as a corporate trainer. Right now, I make
not corporate trainer money.
Enough to not pay no bills.
Right.
If I had to pay a lot of bills, I'd be whoop.
Yeah, it'd be a problem.
I definitely do it for like the love of what I'm doing, right?
Okay.
But I had to learn how to budget. I had to learn what really are expenses and how to really write that out to make sure that when I'm done at the end of the year, that I'm not going to have this crazy tax liability when I've also had all of these business expenses. But like, I didn't know about managing business expenses before then. Because like I said, first of all, I made really, really, really good money. But on top of that, my job paid for all of our expenses. So like if we had to travel, everything was paid for. They provided us lunch every single day.
Yeah. And that's people don't understand how that takes in your budget. I'm like, if they're paying for your food, man, you don't have to go to the grocery store. I'm gonna go to work. Like, what are you talking about? And you getting good food. Like, you ain't getting
Mhm,
like, you know what I mean? For
mhm.
me, a public sandwich, these people going to nice restaurants for lunch, ordering in. I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take you some home. Okay, I will
I'll
do
tell
that.
you this. Because I just recently did my taxes. I paid over $100 last year for parking,
Wow.
for business related parking. When I
To
was
the
working
hospital.
in the hospitals, they paid for my
Yeah.
parking. It was just, it's these expenses that you don't think about, but like you have to learn how to manage your funds, how to manage your business. My mentor, one of the things that she said that always sticks with me is if you're not making money, it's just a hobby.
Mhm.
Even if you think it's a business, if
No,
you don't have $1 of profit, it is a hobby.
exactly.
It's not a business. It's a hobby because you are costing yourself more than you're making.
Right.
And truly taking an entrepreneurship class, and especially if people want to be a doula, there are business classes specifically for doulas that some of the OGs have put together. They really help teach you how to manage the business, how to run the business, um, because it's way different than every month changes how much money I make, right? Like
Okay.
every single month, depending on how many births I'm going to take, depending on which package people pick. And so really learning how to like to manage the business end of it and knowing that if in May you have 5 clients, but in June you got 2, then manage that time based on 7 clients instead of this month to that month. I didn't know nothing about that till I learned about business. So
Yeah.
that's for anything. Anybody want
Yeah.
to start a business, like go take an entrepreneurship class and then
Exactly.
understand either you have a customer service personality type or you hire somebody that does.
Right. You don't get to talk to people. So a couple things. Like I said, I mean, I'm so grateful for you offering I mean just a wealth of experience. And if you guys are still chatting it up because they definitely been hitting the chat. Let me know down in the comments. Let Kyra know um how you think, what did you think about this opportunity? Because I really thoroughly have enjoyed it. You had mentioned a little bit, but what are some of kind of the typical expenses that someone needs to be prepared for going into this role? Obviously, parking stuff like that, minute, but just like the core, you know what I mean? Because I don't know if you're working from home. And then another one that I had was you talked about timing. You have clients, and anytime you're in a client-based business, you always have to understand what's max capacity for yourself.
Mhm.
So have you reached max capacity, or what would you say is max capacity for yourself?
I'll tell you this, I'm on a 4-month birth break right now. So yes, I reached my maximum capacity last year.
Wow.
But that was last year was my biggest year in my business. In one way or another, I supported over 30 births and I was on maternity leave until April. So
Okay.
I spent the first 3 months on maternity leave. So in 9 months, 9, 10 months, I supported that many people. That was a lot. I was crazy. I lost my mind. I never do that again. Um, but I had to do it to know that that was my limit, right?
Right.
Um, so I would definitely say, like, as far as expenses, like you have to think about feeding yourself. Births can be very, very long. And so if I'm at a hospital, I've been at a hospital with a client for 31 hours. Like, you have to really plan out feeding yourself. You have to plan out gas. When I am on call, I always have a full tank of gas. Like, but you have to really plan out, like, this is my gas expense based on the different hospitals I have to go to. Like I can tell you, I'm exactly 15.7 miles from Mobap. I'm 15.3 miles from Mercy. You have to really plan it out, right? Because those are your actual business expenses. Um, I work from home right now, but prior to the pandemic, I did my initial interviews in person at a restaurant. So,
Mhm.
and I always paid for whatever we had. So I had to include that into my expenses.
Business meal.
Um, the stuff you wear, right? Because these are all expenses you can write off. But like the stuff that I wear, so I always have on some type of a doula related shirt. I have really comfortable tennis shoes. And then I usually wear like leggings or sweatpants or something, but something that I'm comfortable in. If you get a little splash of blood, it's no big deal. But you have to like plan that, right? That's a real expense because I don't wear my birth clothes anywhere else. I have one outfit that I wear when I go do postpartum visits because my very first postpartum visit is usually before a baby has had any vaccinations. So I have an outfit that I can bleach. And that is why I always go see new babies in, planning that type of thing, right? Other expenses, I always do a gift for all of my clients. And so figuring out like what kind of gift you want to give, what kind of gift will leave people thinking about you, right? Like I said, I have amazing relationships with all of my clients. Most of my clients for this year I got from clients I had last year. But planning out gifts, planning out contracts. I don't recommend anybody to ever have a contract that they've not at least had a lawyer look at to find out like if something went wrong, am I covered? Am I okay? Having liability insurance for your business. Doulas cannot get malpractice insurance. So we have to get liability insurance. Planning that out, okay? Thinking about the wear and tear on your car. Thinking about if you want to get an office space. That's my goal this year, is to get an office space so that there's less wear and tear on me and my body and my car, where people can come in to do childbirth education. So it's all different types of expenses depending on like how in depth you want to go. But make sure you figure out what those potential expenses are.
Yeah, before you undertake, because that's gonna cut your bottom line. Well, yeah, that too.
Write it off.
Yeah, you gotta have notes. And then you're an entrepreneur, and you're as far as I know, female. So one of the things that I've always been intrigued and impressed with, honestly, is the number one rising group, and especially in St. Louis, because you fit that mold, is the African American woman entrepreneur. So, what would you, or what do you do? Because you're a mom and your son's 15 months now. What do you do to help yourself not fall into mom guilt? You're building a business, all those type of things. What would you?
Is it terrible for the doula to say that she has like just truly awful mom guilt sometimes? So
it's a real thing though. Like people really don't understand. Like I'm constantly having conversation with colleagues and friends, and I mean I hear it, and I mean it's all over TV. But the fact is, the way women take perceptions of how they're building their relationship with their child when they're doing over and above exceptional, but for some reason it's still not meeting what they think it should be. So,
and I'll tell you this. I'm gonna tell you like my worst mom guilt moment, and then how I built my way back from it. I realized a few months ago that I had never had my son at night by myself, but his dad has many times, because I will have to jet out of here at 2 a.m. to go deal with a birth, and I'm gone. Like I said, I've been at the hospital with a client before for 31 hours. I'm gone. Okay. And I was like, wow, I feel so bad. And it was some mom guilt. It was also some partner guilt. Because in that moment I realized how much me pursuing my dream of having a business, my passion of safe birth, was impacted, like the risk and the sacrifice that he was making, right? He don't know nothing about babies, and he's been with this baby overnight by himself since he was like 5 months old. And so
learn.
Terrible mom guilt, right? And then I was like, but first of all, my baby's asleep. He don't know I'm not here. He's sleeping.
Right.
But second of all, I feel like while I am here, I'm engaged as I possibly can be. You know, we all catch ourselves like this sometimes, and then our babies will be like, And so, but that's how I brought myself back from that. It's like making sure that when I am with him, that I'm super duper engaged with him. And just knowing that when he gets older, he can say that like his mom did this really important thing. And
Mhm.
his mom had this job that she took very serious and she made sacrifices and she would go be gone all night and then come be with him all day. Because he doesn't go to daycare. I'm with him all day.
Exactly.
And so I teach him everything. And so just remembering that like nobody else could be his mama but me.
Mhm.
You know, literally nobody else could be his mama. They could be his auntie, his cousins, his whoever, but I play a very valuable role to him.
Mhm.
And it's okay that I run a business. It's okay that I
Mhm.
have to be gone sometimes. People go to work every day.
Yeah.
So I have to make money somehow.
Yeah.
But and I think also like women have to step away from whatever it is and realize like mama has to be okay for baby to be okay.
Mhm.
And so if that means going on vacation or if that means running your business,
Exactly.
whatever it means for you to be happy and fulfilled is important so that your baby can know what it looks like for a woman, especially a black woman, to be help, happy, healthy, and safe.
Mhm.
Right? Those are like my tenets. Happy, healthy, safe. And so forget mom guilt. Don't even think about it because sometimes you're gonna feel guilty, right?
Mhm.
You feel guilty. You have food guilt. You have parent
Yeah.
guilt. You have
Yeah.
partner guilt. You have friend guilt. It's just
Yeah.
another guilt. Don't think about it. Move
Yeah,
on.
that's a so big for, and the big word that wraps around there is grace, right? But that's one of the things that I actually I learned because I was listening to TD Jakes sermon one time, and one of the things he said was, "Your parents might not have been there, but look at where you at now." So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, whatever they did do was enough. And
Mm-hmm.
as we were preparing to have a kid, I had conversation with grandparents and uncles and aunts and all that, and I'm like, "Hey, whatever you can give, it'll be okay." My wife, myself, whatever you can do, that'll be okay. I'm not expecting you to go above and beyond. If you can't make it, you can't make it. But I know for me, yeah, I'm with you. I work from home. I'm always here. One of the things that I even catch myself because I'm on social media and my business on online and all that. So on the phone a lot. One of the things that late at night when I'm talking to her or that I'm watching her play and she's messing up the living room or something. One of the things that I learned is when I do speak to her, look her in the eyes and
Mm-hmm.
really focus in. And for some reason, I can actually see a difference
Mm-hmm.
with that. And I'm like, if I do that, I wonder if I do that consistently enough, what result will happen from
Right.
that.
Right.
But I do notice like her body and how she's taking information, even though she's not quite understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It changes because I'm
It's
looking her
connection.
dead
Kids
in the eye.
thrive off of connection. It's
Yeah,
connection. That eye contact. It's like, okay, daddy's listening to me. Daddy's
right,
communicating with me. We are here. We're locked in.
right.
And people don't realize like so much behavior that we see from kids that we don't like. Once we get that connection piece in there, a
Exactly.
lot of that goes away because kids really want to connect. Like
Yeah.
that eye contact, that's invaluable. And that's also like teaching her to like require people to respect her because
Yeah.
eye contact is a sign of respect. Like those little bitty nuggets, like
And then speak life into her. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like I said, you got all these books, but just hey, you can do whatever you want. I will work. We work hard. It's hard, but you can do whatever you want. You're not less than
mhm.
all that. No, but yeah, I did learn, pick that up from a few people, and they were like, just watch how your child responds. So good. So, Kyra, if possible, there's a lot of people in the group that are in St. Louis. How can they connect with you?
So my website is thedivineflowerchild.com. You can find me on all of the social media at Divine Flower Child. And on Facebook, my business page is Divine Flower Child, but my personal page is Kyra Betts Doula. And it's an open page. I don't have a private page. So you can follow me, get lots of good information, good conversation. I like to think that I'm very funny.
Yeah.
So
No, she really is very funny.
I like to think I'm very funny. So
yeah, she's very funny.
I think that has a lot to do with my success because it's very disarming. I
Yeah.
don't code switch at all. Who you get is who you get is who you get.
Yeah.
And I think that really translates well for what I do because I'm super knowledgeable, but I'm also like very relatable. And I tell like all my clients like I'm just treat me like I'm your homegirl as you can tell anything, and it creates a very safe space. So that's where y'all can find me on everything.
No, I definitely appreciate it, guys. I definitely appreciate if you stuck with me this long. I know it's an hour. I definitely ran long. The conversation just got too in depth. I couldn't let
That's
it
how it's
go.
supposed to be.
But I definitely appreciate y'all stopping in. So I'll get that link. I'll drop it in the group. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll definitely drop the link in the description. But yeah, you gotta know your options, man. You gotta know your options. And to be honest, $3,000, whether it's 1,800, $3,000, to be quite honest, look at what the value. If you got a good one, if you got a good doula,
right?
Look at the value you can get and just personally experience that breastfeeding, those different components. It's hard, and so you need someone who really understands how your body may work and really help you make an empowered choice even when you may not have the strength to do it for yourself. So be a good advocate. So good. Kyra, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit more backstage, but guys, I can't wait to see you in the next